So we won in 78 and 79. In 1980, we were primarily a freshman led team, very, very, very young, with the exception of Jeff Milliman, who was mature, and we knew he was stud. We knew that he was a performer, and we didn't have anybody that could run with him at all. I thought in 1980, I thought, well, we're going to be lucky if we get to the national championship, but Jeff Milliman will get there. With that freshman level team, I learned something. We shocked everybody at the regional championship, which were held at Rock Island. We beat the team that ended up winning the national championship in 1980. We beat them at the regional. And we went in there, it's like, oh my gosh, we won. And I made one of my many, many coaching blunders. I took him to the van, and I've never made this mistake again, because we'd won in 78 and 79. I said, guys, shouldn't have said this. Now you can win the national title. Look what you just did. Scared the heck out of them. I put the monkey on their back. I pressured them, by saying that. I should have kept my mouth shut. You can't give instant confidence to people. You can't do it. So all of a sudden now they think, we got to win. When we went into the regionals, like, hey, we're just happy to be here. Let's see what happens. I went to Joe Newton, my mentor from York High School. I said, Joe, what did I do wrong here? He said, well, Al. He said, it's obvious. He said, your guys didn't feel like they belonged at the national championship. When they went into the regionals, they were just there in the moment, in the now, in the groove, in the zone, ran the race, and, to see what happened. And now, then you tell them, now you can win the national title. And it scared them. They're not ready to be, they have not evolved to be in the front stage, with the right spotlights on them. They're not there. Jeff Milliman did. Jeff Milliman had all the confidence in the world. The rest of the guys did not. But Joe Newton had told me, he said, Al, you should have said this. Hey, we did really well this weekend. Now just do the same thing next weekend. Let's go into it the same way. Rather than building them up, trying to say you're going to tell them they could win the national title. That scared them. Okay. And after we got seventh in the nation that particular year, Jeff Milliman won the national title, and he was confident. He had confidence. He had the knowing. He knew he was good.
Jeff Milliman not only won the Division III individual national title in 1980, but he would also run in the Division I cross-country national meet a week later. Jeff would finish 101st overall at that meet, and as a reference, the University of Illinois finished 21st as a team that day, and Jeff would have been their number 2 runner.
But we sat in the van, and I was stunned. A team that we beat, ended up winning the national title that year. And I said, what'd you feel like? He said, Al, I was shaking so much the night before. I felt like the bed had vibration. I was scared. Another guy said, Al, I felt like I was going to throw up at the line. I scared them. I put pressure on them. And I should have not done that. And so I've never, ever, ever, ever talked about winning again. I just say, hey, it's the process. We're going to do the best we can. That's wisdom from John Wooden. John Wooden never talked about winning. He talked about, hey, the process. And that's what I wanted to focus on from that point on, is being in the flow, in the process, and letting the outcome take care of itself, and give the guys confidence. Say, hey, we've done everything. We turned over all the stones we need to turn over throughout the year. We are ready to be at our best, whatever that's going to be. Can't predict what it's going to be, but we're going to run well in positive expectation and not put an outcome on it. You got to win. You got to beat this team, beat that team. No, those are uncontrollable situations, and what we control is our own performance, and focus on what we can do and run our race, which we practice, from day one, how to get ready for the national championship with all kinds of dress rehearsals to help ourselves be ready physically, mentally, emotionally, and with great confidence when we go to the national championship. Another lesson I learned from Glenn Banke about my own coaching style that was a mistake. Glenn Banke, very astute, he said, Al, he said, when it comes to the conference, this is back at the conference level, early on I learned this. He said, when it comes to conference level, you get more excited. You get, you're more calm at the beginning of the year, and then at the end you're more frantic and excited and all this. He said, I think that really makes the team apprehensive. I've learned that athletes are quite often a reflection of the way their coach acts. And I have, from that point on, been confident and calm at the end of the year, and not think, now I got to give them more excitement at the end of the year. Now we're going to the national championship. This is it. We got to run better. We got to do it. No, forget that. All I want to do is fill them with inner confidence and let the race take care of themselves, and just kind of laugh about the whole thing, that I know they're ready and they're confident from the inside out, and not anything that I'm trying to give them a pep talk or, a motivational speech or anything like that. No, it's way, way, way too late for that at the national championship or the regional championship or the conference championship. Okay, by then you should have had them prepared mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually for that moment. I had to take a hard look at myself and say, it's not the kids' fault. It's not their fault. They're here for 4 years. Hey, if you're here for 30, 40 years as a coach, it's your responsibility to prepare them. It's not their fault if they're not prepared. It is my fault. And I tell the guys, hey, there's nothing to be afraid of or fearful of. We've prepared everything we need to do. Now, you're just going to do what you've already done before, run another 8K race, and you're better prepared at the end of the year than you are at the beginning of the year. Beginning of the year, we're learning. The page is blank. Okay, what do we do about this? How do we run this? What's the 4 parts of the race? How do we feel part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4? What about our team dynamics? By the end of the year, these things have evolved. So it's a time to really sit back and enjoy what's going on. And we call it the knowing. We didn't think we were going to run well. We didn't hope we were going to run well. We didn't guess we were going to run well. We knew we were going to run well. Didn't mean we're going to win. And I would tell the guys, we're the best prepared team in the nation.
North Central came into 1981 ready to roll and went into Kenosha, Wisconsin, determined to bring home another national championship. They held off a tough Brandeis team, winning by 18 and giving North Central their 5th national title.
One of my favorite pictures, regional championship out of Rock Island. Tony Blyle, Jay Rogers, and Bob Dunphy. And if you look at that picture, you'll see, I think it's Tony Blyle, okay? Great runner. In 1982, turning around like this, and he's looking for our number 4 runner, who was Ray Krause. He was coming in 4th behind him. I had that picture on my wall. That's team dynamic. Those guys, and I'll tell you what, in 1982, they didn't care who won the race. In fact, if there was any arguments in any race, it was like, hey, it's your turn to win, your turn to win. They were selfless, not selfish. They were just a great, great, great team.
Winning the national title in 1982 would set a Division III national record of 51 points. Once again, beating a tough Brandeis team by 28. North Central had 3 men in the top 10, Tony Blyle finishing 4th, Bob Dunphy finishing 6th, and Jay Rogers finishing 9th.
Tony Blyle, I'll use his name here, he won't mind. He was end up being the national champion. And Tony Blyle was the guy that said he was shaking. He was a freshman. He was shaking in New York on the bed that he couldn't sleep the night before. And he got 189th. You look it up, 189th as a freshman, and he ended up his senior year winning the national title. And I'll tell you how tough that young man was. He had, I can't remember, a hurt knee, or he had a real injury, some kind of injury. We went out to preview the national course one time, and he couldn't run the course because he was hurt. And he would get some workouts he couldn't, and I don't remember what was wrong. And I remember one time we were running out to Olson's Lane, and he was walking, he couldn't run. And so he could hit and miss with some of his workouts because he was hurt. And then he went on, with great confidence because of what was inside of him to win the national, title, which was really kind of amazing because he had very sporadic workouts his senior year. And again, the beginning of the year, he couldn't even run. There's a number of athletes that we've had like that. It's like miraculous stories that they've had problems, and yet what they overcame to be able to get to be as successful as they were. He came from Putnam County, a little school. Tony Blyle was a good high school runner, not a great high school runner, didn't attract any Division I feedback or interest, but he always wanted to go to Illinois. And Illinois did not, at that time, give him any attention. They never called him, never talked to him, nothing. And we had the Illinois Intercollegiates at Southern Illinois, Edwardsville, and Tony Blyle beat every athlete from the University of Illinois. And I think that was the year we beat University of Illinois. And Tony Blyle was elated. He wasn't cocky, but he was elated because he wanted to show other people that he was a better runner than what they evaluated him to be in high school. He stayed here at North Central College, and what a tremendous young man and athlete he is. And he still runs to this day. You know, I see him every now and again. And I think our whole program is really based on finding those kind of guys.
For 4 straight years, North Central would finish runner-up at the NCAA championships. But in 1987, they would be back in the winner's circle, beating University of Wisconsin lacrosse by 11.
Quick story here. Dan Baker came from New Rushville, Illinois, and his coach was Dick Tucker. I didn't know anything about Dan Baker. You know, he lived on a farm, and they didn't have much at all. He grew their own food and everything else. And he ended up coming to North Central College, and everything he did to the best of his ability. And I put him on work study. That's how he could help make money. There'd be times we'd have track meets, and he'd be working. And I'd say, Dan, you want to take it a little bit easy? No, I want to work as hard as I can. Sometimes you'd have athletes on work study say, getting paid by the hour. No, you're getting paid for getting the job done. Dan did everything he could to the best of his ability, no matter what he was doing. He broke 150 in the half mile, national champion for us. When he graduated, this is an interesting story. He got interviewed by a corporation in Chicago. And I got a call, and he asked me, he said, I've narrowed this job down to 2 people. Dan Baker is one of them. What can you tell me about Dan Baker? I said, you'll never find a harder working person ever. I've never seen anybody like him. If he's cleaning toilets, he's cleaning toilets to the best of his ability. He doesn't slack off at anything and say, oh, it's only work study. No, he does a great job at everything he does. I told him this. I said, you know what? You'll call me at some point and say you made the right decision if you hire Dan Baker. They hired Dan Baker. It was a year or so later. One time, Dan Baker came out to visit me. And we sat and talked and everything. And I said, well, Dan, how are you here? He said, well, I took a personal day and I wanted to come out and just say thanks and say hi and da-da-da-da. So he was here. And when he went back, this CEO or his employer called him into his office and said, Dan, we're giving you a raise. And Dan said, why? He said, well, the rumors came out that you were interviewing for another job someplace else, so we're giving you a raise. Well, here, we do not want to lose you. He took a day off and got a raise. But it was his work ethic that people recognized. And that's what you want to find in somebody. People have talent. Some have more talent. No question about it. You got to have talent. But man, what really accelerates and magnifies and synergizes the talent is what's inside of you. And Dan had that within him, believe me. And he came from a pretty humble background, believe me. Became a great runner for us.
One of the more interesting things that happened to North Central in the 1980s was one of the top long and triple jumpers in the world, who had finished as high as 5th at a World Indoor Championship meet, made his way to North Central and rewrote the record books of Division III.
Jan Cato had defected from Czechoslovakia. He was at a track meet here in the United States someplace, and he defected. A woman here that happened to be in Naperville that was from, I think, the country, and she really became kind of a sponsor for him and helped him. And so he came to North Central College. People told me about him, and they wanted him to get an education at North Central College. Quite frankly, and I'm being very open, I never recruited him. I never encouraged him, because I thought to myself, wow, if he comes here, he's going to be way above what our level of competition is. He's going to be demanding all these things that we can't provide. Okay? He didn't demand anything. He was one of the most intelligent young men, conscientious young men, appreciative young men I've ever seen. I had him in class. He was brilliant. And I don't know what the word is, but I don't know how many languages he knew. He knew about 4 or 5 languages. He was brilliant. But he had one of the rare things they say that a person could do. You could give him a paragraph, and he could say the words phonetically correct and repeat the whole thing backwards. And very few people in the whole world can do that. He was brilliant, and he didn't want anything of me. I remember one time I had like a, Walgreens bag or a Target bag that I'd got a little sack, just plastic bag. And he said, "Oh, could I have that?" He was so appreciative. He thought having a plastic bag was a tremendous thing to have. That's the only thing I remember giving him. I didn't coach him. He knew far more about all of track and field, because that's the way he was brought up. He knew far more about all the events in track and field than I would ever know. Okay? And he certainly knew the triple jump and long jump better. He said, "Coach, can you come over here and look at my step?" And he didn't even trust me to see his step. He would put sand down, to see where this footprint was on the sand. Okay? And I would check that. Cato was pretty much self-sufficient. The coach that really took him over, Doug Malinsky, really worked with him. Felt, I don't want to say guilty, that's the wrong thing, but a little funny I knew he wasn't your typical Division III athlete, but he wasn't getting any scholarship or anything like that from North Central College. But he wanted to be here, and he lived here, and he was on the team, and he was just one of a kind.
1988 and 1989 would see the cross-country team finish second, and in the decade of the 1980s, North Central won 3 titles, runner-up 6 times, and only 1 finish outside the top 5 in those 10 years. On the track, with the help of the following individual national champions, Jan Cato, Rich Scott, and Dan Baker, North Central would win indoor and outdoor track titles in 1989. Tune in to the 4th installment of the documentary series to see how the 1990s would be North Central's best decade to date in more ways than one.